Welcome back. We're still on day 1 of our new unit, Unit 9A, Circles. We're talking about circumference and area. Remember, there's 2 formulas that we use for circumference, pi times the diameter, or 2 times pi times the diameter. And then my area is pi r squared, and you will always have access to these formulas. We talked about the difference between exact answers, where you have not used the pi in the calculator yet, you have it written still on the paper. And then your rounded answers, once you put in you use the pi button on your calculator, or you use 3.14. So notice, depending on if you use the pi button or if you use 3.14, you will get slightly different answers. Okay? All right, so let's look at this next one, number 2. It says, given the circumference is 15.62, find the diameter and the radius, round to the nearest 100. Okay? All right, so my circumference, we know, is pi times the diameter. I'm going to find the diameter first, because then I know I just have to divide that in half. My circumference is 15.62. That equals pi times the diameter times the diameter. So to get rid of the pi, we have to do the opposite of times, which is divide. So that goes away, and I just have the diameter equals this quotient, this division. So I'm ready to go to the calculator to find out what my diameter is approximately equal to, because we're going to be putting that pi in the calculator. Okay? All right, so here is my calculator, which I used on the last problem. I'm going to clear that last problem out. 15.62, oops, I did 16, divided by, I'm going to use the pi button first. I get 4.97, and after the 7 is a 2, so I'm not going to round up. I'm going to leave it at 4.97. My units here are meters. And then I'm just going to hit divide by 2 and enter to give me my approximate radius. So my radius is about 2.48, and after the 8 is a 6, so I am going to round that up to 2.49. 2.49 meters. Or, instead of using the pi button, I could use 3.14. So if I use 3.14, I'm going to do 15.6 divided by 3.14. 15.62 divided by 3.14 gives me 4.97, and then that 4 says, don't worry about rounding. So 4.97, oh, I got the same exact answer. Approximately 4.97 meters. And then my radius is approximately, divide this by 2, divide by 2. And then again, 2.48 rounds up to 2.49 meters. Okay? Notice it's really close to 2.5 and it's really close to 5, but because it told me to round to the 100th, I need to follow those directions, and I need to round to 2 decimal places. Okay? Don't over round. All right, the next one, say find the exact circumference and area, which means I am not going to be putting my pi button in the calculator. Okay, not going to be putting my pi button in the calculator because I want exact. All right, on this one, the first one I see, if I want the exact circumference and area, I can see they didn't give me a radius or a diameter, which kind of is annoying because I need that, right? But I also see I have a right angle here, which means this is a right triangle where both my legs are the same. So I know this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle because it's isosceles and right. So it's going to be 9, 9, and then this whole thing here is going to be 9 square root of 2. 9, 9, 9 square root of 2. Okay, and I just used my special right triangles for that. 9, 9, 9 square root of 2. And I need that because if I use Pythagorean theorem, I'm definitely going to get a decimal, because 9 times the square root of 2 is going to be a decimal. And since it wants the exact answer, decimals are not okay. All right, so 9, 9, 9 square root of 2, that's my diameter. That's going to help me find my circumference, because my circumference is pi times the diameter. My circumference here is pi times 9 square root of 2. So it's 9, it's pi times 9 times the square root of 2. So really I have 3 things being multiplied. Okay? Remember when we talked in the last video about the order that we write things in? Up here I had 2 pi r and then pi d. And notice we said the number is always going to go in front, and then I said a square root would always go at the end. So when I have a pi and a 9 and a square root of 2, the number is always going to go first. And then the square root of 2 is going to go at the end. The pi will go in the middle. 9 pi square roots of 2. If you write it this way, it's not wrong. It's just more universally accepted to be written this way. This is my answer. Okay? The area, pi r squared, my area equals pi times my radius squared. Now, I know my diameter is 9 square roots of 2. So my radius is half of 9 square roots of 2. So my radius is 4.5 square roots of 2. 4.5 square root of 2 is my radius, and we're going to square that. And the square is going to square both the 4.5 and the 2. Or sorry, and the square root of 2. So pi times 4.5 squared. That I'm going to use my calculator for. 4.5 squared, and I do have a squared button, or I could just multiply 4.5 to itself. 20.25. And then we're also squaring the square root of 2. Remember, squares and square roots cancel out. So that's actually going to become just 2, because the square and the square root are going to cancel out. But if you need to see that, if I do the square root of 2, so I square rooted 2, then if I square that, it gave me 2. It's just 2, because the square root and the square cancel out. So now I have the area equals pi times 20.25 times 2. So pi or area equals pi times 20.25 times 2. These two numbers I can multiply together. 2 or 20.25 times 2 gives me 40.5. Notice I didn't write the pi. I didn't put the pi in the calculator, so that means it still needs to go on the paper. Don't forget to write the pi. It's the best part of the meal. Okay? It'll always go at the end unless you have a square root. If you have a square root, the square root will go on the end. Okay? All right, let's look at the next one. The next one I can see I have a diameter drawn through. I have a 7 and I have a 3, which means this is going to be rectangular, so I'm going to have a 3 over here and a 7 over here also. So in this one, we need to figure out what my diameter is. Okay, so I need to figure out what this is. So my diameter, I'm going to come up here and go, well, the diameter would be the hypotenuse of this right triangle. Right? And the hypotenuse we get by adding the square of the two legs. So 7 squared plus 3 squared. So my diameter is the square root of 49 plus 9. 49 plus 9 is 58. Okay, and the square root of 58, I don't think that's simplifiable. Let's see, 58 divided by, nope. Nope. I think that's going to be just the square root of 58. I can't think of a perfect square. Let's see, 58. No. Nope. So square root of 58 is just going to be my diameter. Okay? Which means my radius is going to be the square root of 58 divided by 2. Okay? All right, my circumference. My circumference is pi times, I know my diameter, I also know my radius, but my diameter is kind of prettier to look at, so I'm going to go pi times d, which gives me a circumference of pi times the square root of 58. Now, if I put this in the calculator, I'm going to get a decimal. And since it wants exact, I'm going to leave it exactly like this. Square roots always go on the end, so the pi will stay in front. This is my circumference. I don't have to do any more work on that. My area equals pi r squared. So my area equals pi times the square root of 58 squared over 2 squared. So again, that's 2 has to square both of those numbers. So I'm going to end up with pi times the square root of 58 squared is just 58 because square roots and squares cancel out. 2 squared is 4. So 58 divided by 4 is 14.5. 58 divided by 4 is 14.5. So that 14.5 is going to move to the front, and the pi will go on the end. And that is my exact area. If I put the pi in the calculator and then I have to round, it's no longer exact. Okay? All right, one more. On this last one, again, I'm going to have to use Pythagorean theorem to find my diameter because they've given me the 2 legs of a right triangle and my diameter is the hypotenuse. So my diameter is going to be adding the square of the 5 and the 12. So my diameter equals the square root of 144 plus 25. So my diameter is the square root of, when I add those together, now that is a perfect square. When I square root, I end up with my diameter is just 13. My radius is going to be half of that, 6.5. So this one is the nicest of these 3 to do. Really, it's just this one in the middle. It's kind of ugly. All right, so my circumference equals, I'm going to use pi d, since I already have my diameter is 13. Circumference equals my pi times my diameter. Numbers always move to the front, so my circumference equals 13 pi. Area equals pi r squared. So my area equals pi times the radius is 6.5 squared. So I need to square that 6.5 and then that's going to move to the front. So I'm going to get my calculator, 6.5, and then I'm going to hit the square button. And I get 42.25. So area equals 42.25. Don't forget, we didn't put pi in the calculator, so we still need to write it on the paper. Don't leave it out. It doesn't leave the problem until you put it in the calculator. The reason we're not putting it in the calculator is because as soon as I multiply by pi, then I have to start rounding, and it wants the exact circumference. Okay, so there is and area. So there are my answers to 3, 4, and 5, my exact circumferences and areas. None of those answers have been rounded at all. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, please make sure you attend sync time and ask your teacher either during the sync time or after the sync time during the tutoring of the remaining time left in class. All right, thank you so much for watching.